Guys, it's Julian, and today I'm super excited to be showing you how to make drums like Ski Mask. I've gotten a bunch of requests for this one, and I'm going to be giving away the project file and samples from this video for free in the description, so make sure to pick that up. And yeah, let's get started. So here's the loop you heard in the intro. The first layer we have is this breakbeat, which sounds like this. So this layer is really quiet. It's kind of just accentuating everything else that's going on with the other layers. I'll talk about that more in a bit. But for now, the way that I made this was by taking this breakbeat. I'll show you. This is the original sample. So like a drum and bass type beat, like kind of an old school like jungle style breakbeat. And then what I did was I took it in here and I chopped it up. So you can see the original pattern is kind of like a two-step pattern. And then I took it and then I put like the snare here. So, you know, pretty simple stuff. Just kind of taking it and chopping it up to give it like some new life, I feel like. This is something Ski Mask does a lot. Like, he takes a lot of breaks from older kind of like jungle and rave tracks and then does stuff like this. Like, just chops them up and tries to give them like a more unique kind of original vibe. So, here's what it sounds like with no effects on it. With the chops. So you can see I've just kind of come in here and taken a few different pieces of the break and sort of like spliced them together. The best thing I can recommend for this is just kind of like dive in. Like, there's not really a whole lot of tips about like chopping up breaks I can give, other than, like I said, just get started, start chopping stuff up and start just placing different hits on different places. Like, for example, in the original here, the snare hits on the 4, so I moved it back to this little 8th note here right before the 4. Just like stuff like that to kind of breathe new life into it. And then another thing you'll see is this is a bit lower in pitch than that original sample. So I just put it on repitch mode when I warped it. That just makes it plays it back like a little bit more nicely, because when you keep it on like complex or beats or any of these other modes, what's happening is it's like really warping the sound. Whereas when you put it on repitch, all it's doing is just pitching the sound to essentially give it the timing that you want. It would be the same as if it was completely unwarped and then you just use the transpose knob to pitch it to the right speed. So then for effects on there, the first thing I have here is this resonator, which sounds like this. So you can hear what this is doing is it's just giving the sound a bit more of like a metallic kind of sound. This is a really popular thing with like older kind of jungle tracks and like a lot of old school stuff where they use breakbeats, and in Ski Mask's music, like giving it this kind of like metallic sound. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. You can use like a comb filter, you can use a flanger, you can even use a delay with like a really fast time. I use the resonators because I kind of like how it has like a little bit of a different, more like metallic vibe. Like if you do it with like a delay or a flanger or something like that, it sounds like you're trying to use a flanger or a delay to sound metallic, I feel like. Whereas with this, it just kind of felt like it was like its own unique texture. If that makes any sense. So the way I set that up is just like this. I've got the note on A#1, and then we got the pitch there. And yeah, just adding that kind of like metallic overtone to everything. After that, I have a saturator. Actually, I have two saturators, which sound like this. So this is where most of the sound is happening that you're really hearing with this one. Basically, here's what the first one sounds like. And then with the second one. So what I've got going on here is I've just kind of used these saturators to like shape the sound. You can see I've got the wave shaper on here on both of them. And I was just trying to like kind of make the break more crunchy, but also I was trying to make this more of like a top kind of like background layer. Like I said, this one isn't really like the main break that's in the front that you're really hearing. It's more just adding that kind of crunchy like top end there. So like I said, I just used the wave shaper to do this. I just kind of played around with all these settings. The damp is pretty important here. That is sort of like a transient shaper. That's what's kind of making it like focus on those hits. Like if you hear, you're mostly just hearing the kick and the snare now. That's because of that damp and how high I have it on both of them. So then after that, I've got an EQ8 cutting out the low end just to clean it up. And then finally, I just have a compressor very, very lightly sidechaining it to the kick to bring the kick out a little bit more. So that's the first break beat. The second one we have here sounds like this. And so this is more of the one that you're hearing. So the way that I made this was I took this break beat. So like another old school jungle drum and bass type beat. And then I have it on in here. I warped it. I've got it on repitch mode, just like that first one. Here's what it sounds like without any effects. So you can see with this one, I chopped it up as well. It's just following that same pattern as the first one. That's the key. If you're going to layer together multiple breaks like this and sort of like try to make them fit in with each other, you just have to make sure they're like really, really tight with the groove. And that means, like I said, like just having them play the same beat essentially. Like it's just the same pattern with another one. And also, a good tip for chopping up breaks is always work in eighth notes. Not always, but like if you're new to it, start working in eighth notes. So what I mean by this is if I set this to eighth note grid, which is actually already on, but I have it on the narrow grid. Yeah, eighth notes there. You can see like we can chop this up. Like we can take a snare, we can take the kick, we can take like that little thing. We can even take these little rolls. But when you work with eighth notes, it allows you to kind of like keep the structure of the original beat and the sound and just like the sonic quality that you get from those original breakbeats, while still like being able to chop it up and have complete freedom. Like if you were working in quarter notes, it would be a little bit hard. I guess you could do something like that. But when you work in eighth notes, yeah, like I said, it allows you to still get those like faster grooves because you can have all the 16-note rolls and stuff. But it's just going to sound a little bit cleaner and a little bit better. And this is really a technique that I think most people use when they chop up breaks like this. So then for effects on this one, what we've got is first I have the saturator here. So very similar to that first break. I'm just using it to kind of give it that more interesting texture. I think this is what Ski Mask does a lot of the time. I'm sure maybe he's doing it with some kind of other saturator. But saturation, especially the Wave Shaper with Ableton Saturator, is such a good way to give your breakbeats like that kind of like texture. Like if I turn this off and then turn it on, you can hear, like, it just helps bring it to life. Like, it makes it sound less like a loop and more like something that's happening live in front of you. And I guess it is because it's a loop going into this effect, which is shaping it. So, yeah, like I said, just kind of played around with the Wave Shaper on that one and gave it a bit of drive. And that's how I got that. So then after that, I have an EQ8 cutting out the low end, which, as you can hear, is pretty essential here. And then finally, I just have a compressor side-chaining it to the kick, just very slightly, to kind of let the kick come through a little bit more. So the next thing we have here is this rim shot, which sounds like this. So this is like a nice kind of rim shot, kind of similar to the type that Ski Mask uses a lot. Basically, I was just trying to get one of those nice, kind of like more organic sounding rim shots, and I think this one sounds pretty good. And so what I did with this one was I just put it in here on that second snare hit each time the loop restarts, essentially, to just kind of like accentuate it and give it a bit of vibe. What we have on here for effects is, well, first I have an EQ8 cutting out the low end, but I also have a reverb. So what happens is this snare or this rim shot just kind of hits every now, like sort of at the end of every beat, I guess, or every bar. And then it just kind of rings out a little bit. Like, it's a nice way to kind of add some punctuation and to take it out of just the breaks as well. Like, what you're trying to do with this style and what Ski Mask does really well is use breaks, but then, like, add a little bit more of a modern feel to them and add something to them that kind of, like, helps to bring them to life and takes it out of just, like, that old break sound. And so having stuff like this really helps. So then the next thing we have here is this kick, which sounds like this. So what this is, it's just kind of like a nice punchy kick. Pretty straightforward. I don't have any effects on it, and I'm just putting it in here, and it's just playing this pattern that I feel like kind of goes really well with the breakbeat. Yeah, just like a kind of like, I guess it's pretty busy, kind of like clubby pattern. Here it is with one of the breaks so you can hear. So yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I feel like I said, it's just sort of accentuating what the breaks are doing, and this is very similar to the rim shot. Is like adding stuff like this really brings it to life, and I was trying to get like that same vibe like Ski Mask uses as well when he puts like a kick over breakbeats, like in 50 Euro to Break Boost, like tracks like that. Like this is definitely a good technique. And then like I was saying earlier, I just sidechained the breaks to this kick very slightly just to let it come through a little bit, mostly for the high end, to be honest with you, because the thump of the kick was coming through. Like that's no problem, but then the high end, like that click at the start, wasn't really coming through. So that's why I sidechained the breaks to it. So then the final layer we have here is this last sort of breakbeat hi-hat thing. It sounds like this. So what this is doing is this is meant to be like a hi-hat. Just kind of like some extra stuff in the background to give it like more groove. I feel like if you listen to the beat without it, and then I bring it in, you can hear it's a really nice element. Like it's adding a lot of high end, which rounds this out more and makes it feel less dark and gives it more clarity. And then it's also helping like the flow of the beat. Like I said, it's like helping the groove because you have this eighth note pattern going like that, and so it just kind of I feel like it helps to kind of pull the beat along. So the way that I made this one was I took this breakbeat, like an old school kind of think break, and I just took those hi-hats at the start, in between that kick and the snare, this little part, that, I took that, and then I just put it in here, and copied it over a bunch of times, as you can see. And then all I did for that, for processing, was I just put an EQ8 on there, cutting out the lung, because you can hear there's a bit of lowering in the original, and even when you just take those hi-hats, you can hear and see it's still coming through. So yeah, just kind of cut that out, clean it up a bit. And then finally, I just have a compressor side chaining to the kick very slightly, just like the other breaks. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you guys some techniques I picked up on listening to Ski Mask's music and kind of like some stuff you could use for your own music. And yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. So make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Once again, you get the project file and samples from this video in the description for free, so make sure to pick that up. And you can also check out my social media in the description, which is on the screen right now. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.